Hi there, guys. Are you a teacher who's overworked, overstressed, underpaid, and unappreciated? You deserve better, right? We all do. Have you ever considered teaching overseas at an international school? Well, I'm going to give you 10 reasons why you definitely should. If that sounds interesting to you, stick around and let's get started. How was your last parent teacher conference? How do you feel on Sunday nights when you're thinking about going to work the next day? Do you need to have a second job just to pay the bills? These are some of the realities of teaching these days. I'm talking about teachers that are working in countries like Australia, where I was from, the US and the UK, where teachers are dropping out at record rates, where college students are opting not to study teaching at college because it's not seen as a career where you have high salary, high respect, and a high quality of life. When was the last time you spent your own money buying teaching resources just so that you can do your job, so that you can do the best thing for your students? At this time every year, when I open up my phone and I have a look at Twitter, X, the thing that blows my mind is this clear the list movement. Teachers in the US that are, for want of a better word, almost begging for help to buy teaching resources just so they can do their job. Now, I've never had to do that, and I've been lucky, I suppose. I don't recall ever doing that when I was a teacher back in Australia. It is absolutely ridiculous that teachers have to actually do this in order to just get the resources that they need. When I taught in Australia, I was more worried about things like crowd control and maybe fights at the playground and classroom management strategies than I was really about real teaching strategies, teaching and learning. And we're in this for the learning, right? So that really should be our focus. Luckily, around about 24 years ago, I stumbled on something different, something better. I was on a holiday in Vietnam with a friend of mine, and I ran into these American teachers. And the interesting thing about these teachers is that I just thought they were on a holiday. I thought they were teachers in the US, and they were on a holiday, and they were sort of doing what we were doing. We were doing the standard north to south route from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh. I started talking to them, and I found out that they were actually teaching in China. They were teaching in Beijing. And I wasn't quite sure of what kind of a teaching job they would have, being Americans teaching in China. And so I assumed, of course, they were just teaching English. And there's nothing wrong with teaching English. It's great being an English language teacher in some, exotic location. But what I found out was actually they were working at an international school, and they were just there in Hanoi on a workshop. They'd been sent there to do this workshop, and it was part of their professional development. The other thing I found out was that this wasn't their first overseas appointment. They had come from various places. I met someone who had taught in South America, someone who had been teaching in Japan before they'd moved to Beijing, and the other one who was teaching in Switzerland. And they told me about something called an international school. And I had no idea that an international school was even a thing. And after this meeting, and I finished my holiday and I went back to my job in a public school in Australia, I started thinking about these international schools. And I found out that they're everywhere. They're all around the world. And that the life of an international school teacher seemed pretty interesting, pretty amazing. I'm talking holidays on tropical islands, palm trees. I'm talking traveling all over the place. I'm talking teaching international students who are motivated, who are hardworking. And I'm talking about where you have respect. So that's something different. Was 23 years ago now. I've been an international school teacher for 23 years in 6 countries and 8 international schools. It's the best thing I've ever done, and I will never go back to teaching in Australia again. In fact, I actually tried it. My 2 daughters graduated, and we decided to go back to Australia and to help them settle in while they were starting university. And my wife and I lasted a mere 18 months before we decided that was enough, and we packed our bags and headed back to the international school scene. We went back to Singapore, then to Hong Kong, and now I'm teaching in Bangkok, Thailand. So I'm going to go through these 10 reasons why you should consider teaching at an international school. Number 1 is respect. Teachers don't seem to have the respect that they deserve in many places around the world. But in international schools, you're hired as a professional. You're hired to do a job. You're hired to achieve results. You are hired because you are a respected professional. and your experience in your field, and you offer value to the education of these international students. You're respected by your leaders, your leadership, so much so that they'll pay to send you to workshops to improve your understanding of curriculum, to work on teaching practices, and you are given autonomy in your classroom. You get to plan curriculum and to decide what you teach and how you teach. The other way that you are respected is you're respected by parents and you're respected by students. Now, I work in Asia, and I've worked in Asia for all of my international teaching. And so maybe it's a little bit more so in Asia, but in Asia, certainly teachers are looked up to. There is this very, very obvious respect, especially from parents who consider the job that you do as being so, so important. So number one, respect. Number two, smaller class sizes. So this is something that really makes such a world of difference. I teach from grade 10 up to grade 12. So I teach the International Baccalaureate to grade 12. And generally my class sizes over the time that I've been overseas have ranged from a small class of 4 or 5 for a grade 12 class up to the maximum of 18. And when you get to 18 and teaching grade 12, we consider that to be a little bit over the top. Mostly you won't have class sizes that are quite that large. For the lower grades, certainly you might go to 18 and maybe even 20. Small class sizes obviously make a huge difference. Now, if you're in a for-profit school, then maybe those class sizes get pushed a little bit to the limits. But in international schools that are non-profit, certainly the focus is not on packing kids into your classroom and filling up your class. The focus is on what's best for the student. And if they have to create an extra class because of the fact that there's high demand in that particular subject, then they'll do that. And so I've often taught classes of less than 10, especially for my grade 11 and grade 12 students. Along with the smaller classes, just generally better working conditions, a nicer timetable with actual planning time scheduled in. Planning time and department time for curriculum development planned into your schedule, and lots of preparation time available. In fact, at the moment, because I have 3 grade 10 classes, I have a grade 11 and a grade 12, I've only got 3 preps. Number 3, real professional growth. So teaching in the International Baccalaureate, you're challenged, but you have the ability and the trust to be creative in the way that you're developing your curriculum. You get to create your own units. You get to be creative. You get to really focus on your professional growth. In fact, that's a big part of the way that you're appraised. You're not appraised by someone coming in at the end of the year and ticking boxes. Professional growth is often based on your own goals that you set yourself. And in many cases, professional growth requires you to do workshops, and sometimes you get to travel around the world to go to these workshops. And sometimes you can actually propose workshops that you really want to attend just for your own professional growth. You get to be more creative in the classroom, especially if you're teaching the IB middle years program, where it's more like a scaffold that you work off, and you get to be really creative. I can teach kind of whatever I like within certain boundaries. And you get to especially decide how you teach. The other thing with professional growth is that there is obviously a career pathway if you want to take that route. If you want to move into coordinator positions, heads of department positions, curriculum leader positions, assistant principal, all of those things are available. And especially in small schools, progression can be really rapid if that's what you're looking for. Number 4, my truly global classroom. So you're teaching students from all around the world. It really is an incredible thing to be standing in front of a class of students who just have incredible different variety of backgrounds. They've got real stories. Some of them might come from wealthy backgrounds, but not all of them. But they're just so interesting. They're often working their second language, if not their third language. Sometimes you're teaching expat kids that are coming from the US or Australia or the UK. Sometimes you're teaching local students as well, depending upon which country you're in. But you could be teaching 10, 12, 15 different nationalities in one class. It's a great experience, and you get to learn from them almost as much as they learn from you. Number 5. So we normally say as teachers that it's not about the money, but sometimes it is. So the salary is a big deal. And obviously, teachers are unappreciated, underpaid in many places, in many cases. But you can actually change that by going overseas. Now, not all international schools are the same, but every single international school that I've worked at, I've been better off financially than I would have been if I was back home in Australia. Sometimes the numbers themselves don't tell you the full story because it's often about cost of living. I might be getting paid slightly less sometimes than I would be paid in Australia, but if I'm living in Thailand or Vietnam or the Philippines, then the savings potential is enormous when the cost of living is so low. But I've also worked in Singapore and Hong Kong where the cost of living is really, really high, and I've still been able to save much, much more than I was ever able to save when I was in Australia. And it's not just the actual salary that you're receiving. It's in many cases a housing allowance or accommodation provided. It's free private health insurance, not just for you, but for your dependents as well. So in my case, for example, I had free health insurance for my wife and my two daughters. The other thing is flights. Every year you get flights back to your country of origin, not just for you, but again, for your dependents. And as well as that, things are paid for. So if you're going on school trips, you'll often be given stipends to pay for your own little expenses. The other thing is that in many cases, the tax is much lower. In some cases, you don't pay tax at all because it's paid for by the school. Certainly, though, the tax rates are much lower in all of the places that I've worked, at least. Number 6, quality of life. Partly, I suppose, because of the financial situation, but you have less financial stress, so you're enjoying your life a lot more. You get to live a little bit of a more extravagant life. You get to go out to dinner more regularly. You get to go away for weekends. You get to travel because you can afford it. And you've got savings, so therefore you don't have that financial stress sort of adding up and adding up. You have less bills to worry about in many cases, especially if your accommodation is paid for, which might include electricity and those kinds of things. So your quality of life just generally improves. Number 7, adventure and fulfillment. So you're immersing yourself into a new culture, and it's exciting. You get to learn so much, especially when you first arrive and if you've never been there before and you've got all this orientation stuff going on. And often the school will take you on tours and they'll try to do these cultural immersion activities to help you settle in and to understand where you're living, because it's not just a case of going and teaching these expat kids. It's in many cases, you're working with local staff as well, and you need to understand the culture of the country. Sometimes you're trying to learn language, and you sometimes have to learn some language to get by. When I was in China, I learned lots of Mandarin, and I really had to, and that was a great part of it. And every day is an interesting little challenge trying to navigate certain things. But even in places where English is widely spoken, there is still a lot to learn about the culture. So you're immersing yourself. You're also learning resilience, how to do things, how to sort of overcome these challenges in unfamiliar environments. And that's a big part of this sort of adventure and fulfillment. And again, kind of related to the travel, it's exciting and a sense of the adventure when you say, okay, where are we going for this long weekend that's coming up? Number 8, the holidays. So yeah, teachers get good holidays. That's probably part of the reason why we don't get the respect that we deserve, because people think we're lazy because our holidays are so great. And often people don't realize how much work we need to do as teachers on those holidays. But the reality is that we do get holidays. And so therefore, if you're on top of your job, then you have lots of opportunities to travel. And in many countries, there's lots of public holidays as well. Here in Thailand, where I am right now, there are quite a few public holidays, so long weekends scattered throughout the year for various reasons. And of course, there's also the big summer break that most teachers get around the world. But we have regular holidays throughout the year, and all of these are opportunities to travel as well. And of course, because you're so close to other places, it's very easy to travel in these holidays. Even if you've only got a week off, that can be a great, exciting holiday to a nearby country. Number 9 is the sense of community. So what I've really found is the international school community is really tight. It's really an incredible experience to be a part of. Not just the teachers and the students, but all of the other staff that you work with that are often from the country where you're living. And you really do miss these people when you leave, and people are often moving on. So It's really sad the last day of school when students are moving on and when teachers are moving on, because you do become really close. And especially in places where you kind of sometimes in a little bit of a bubble and you've got to look out for each other because it might be difficult to make friends outside of your school community. But lots and lots of activities are focused on the school. So you actually can become friends with some of the parents because of the activities that you're involved in that are a part of this community, whether you're playing in sporting teams or whether you're doing other outside activities where you really become a big part of the community. Now, you of course want to get involved in things outside of the school community, but the international school community is really, really tight. And I've got friends that I made in my very first year of international teaching all those years ago that I still keep in touch with today. Number 10, global perspective. So I grew up in a small country town in Australia. I didn't think I would travel anywhere, and I didn't know much about the world. And my life just has completely changed by living overseas and traveling more extensively, but more so the living overseas bit. And you really do change your outlook on the world. You understand the world a whole lot better. And this allows you to understand your own country and your own background better as well. So having this global perspective and knowing people, having friends from all around the world, it's quite amazing. I went to a school where pretty much everyone just kind of looked like me. There was no one from anywhere interesting. And that was the way it was. When I moved to university, things changed slightly. And it's much, much more like that when you're overseas. Your whole community is a global community. You become a global citizen, and that's how you feel. You feel like a global citizen. And I think that's a great thing. Okay, so there are 10 really good reasons why I think you should consider teaching overseas, especially teaching at an international school like I've done. But, and here's the thing, it's scary. And that's probably what you're thinking right now. The buts. But isn't it scary? But isn't it hard to move? Isn't it tough to leave your friends? Yeah, of course it is. You give up certain things when you choose this path. And maybe you choose it for a short time, and that's enough. Or maybe you get addicted to this life and you continue to do it forever, like me. But yeah, it can be scary at first, and the first year can be tough. But believe me, it's well worth it. So, my call to action is simply to say that realize you've got options. If you're miserable, if you're looking for something different, if you want to find a place where there's more respect, where you're looked after better financially, and where your teaching environment is a little bit more enjoyable and rewarding, then maybe international teaching is the thing for you. I'm not saying go out and quit your job today, but I'm saying start doing some research like I did all those years ago. Look up recruitment agencies for international schools. There are lots of great ones. One's called Search Associates. There's ISS, there's TIE Online. There are many of these. And once you start looking at those, you'll then start looking at recruitment fairs. Start looking at recruitment fairs. Maybe sign up to go to a recruitment fair and find out more about it and see what the possibilities are. So the point is you do have options. Okay? So check out some of my other videos here on the channel. I've got quite a few videos about how to actually get started, how to apply for international teaching jobs, and I'm going to continue adding more content here. So if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video.